kind of noticed that in the like we just watched Alien, and like when they go down into the cave area, it's very like bony and kind of feels like a squaw,
What?
what's that bird? What's that fancy bird that you eat? A squab?
Squam?
Squab?
Squab? The little bird?
It's like bony, like aliens are like bony.
I guess so.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. This is a Film to Table. We're recording. My name is Eli.
This is Denise.
And we're we got an interesting one. We just double featured in order to prepare ourselves. That was our prep, like our meal prep for this episode. So we're going to talk about Alien Romulus from this year, 2024. But we just got finished, like 10 minutes ago watching Alien.
Well, rewatching
Alien. Yeah, that's
the OG.
true. The 1979 classic. Mostly because I don't know, we left the theater and we're like, man, I'm jonesing for some
more.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we can talk about, this will be an interesting one when it comes to the food side of things. But,
Yeah, that's not, I don't know.
Well, I have thoughts, so
Okay.
You'll have to think of something, because that's what the people expect from us. The peoples. But so yeah, let's talk about this one in particular. It's kind of funny because I don't know. I don't think I've explicitly said this about this podcast, but we're not really because we're not movie experts or aficionados.
We're just fans.
But I know that I'm sure that there is probably a lot of history involving this movie, because remember there was supposed to be a movie by Blomkamp. Is it Blomkamp?
Something.
Blomkamp?
Yes.
Like the guy who did District 9.
Yes.
I think most people say
I
Blomkamp.
totally,
but I don't know.
forgot that was a thing.
So there was that. And then there's always...
Was like a long time ago or recently?
Probably in the past 5.
I don't know what happened to him.
Pre-pandemic.
It kind of fell off
the
face of the
earth. But that
bit.
sounded like it was really... Like it was a hot thing for a while there. I remember the internet's spinning up the...
Well, he was a really interesting filmmaker for a second there. And
when I
then
think
he
the
just kind of
story
disappeared.
was supposedly an interesting... Because I think it had to do with like Ripley or it had to do with... They Only Come at Night. I forgot her name.
What?
In Aliens 2. Newt.
Oh, Newt.
I think yeah. I think it's like an older Newt or something like that. It's like Ripley and
dies,
Newt.
Though.
I don't know if that's actually
in the third. Well, they don't.
Well, in the third
it.
one, they basically say oh yeah, all that and like I said, I know there's a whole history of that, and I guess we can shout out some of my favorite podcasts, because I know there's a lot of podcasts that kind of cover that sort of stuff. But I know one of the podcasts I listened to, I want to say that it was maybe on It Was a Shit Show, or it was either on It Was a Shit Show or What Went Wrong, the two podcasts that I really enjoy. Where they talk about a lot of the problems on Aliens 3 and how they... I don't know if they retconned but there's just a lot there. And I love the world and franchise of Aliens.
Me too.
But I will say, though, there's a weird... much like a lot of other franchises that I really enjoy, this one also kind of... Not as bad as Hellraiser, but it kind of has this weird,
swings.
Yeah, they expand on they expand on the franchise, but then they do it in ways that I enjoy. But then at the same time, when you step back and look at all of it, you're like,
yeah,
interesting choices.
It's not necessarily, I don't know, coherent one after the other.
Yeah,
except for or the second one directly after the first one, maybe. But yeah, everything else feels like a pretty far departure, I feel like, from the original.
Yeah.
I will say I don't know that I hated any of them.
No.
And I know people
absolutely
bag a lot on the third one.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because for some reason it was on cable TV for a long time. Like it was
Oh, yeah.
always replaying, and that's the only one for whatever reason they
That's
replayed
true.
the third one over and over, and like super edited, right? Super censored. But I have like a weird soft spot for that one. I
Well,
know
it's Fincher's
most people.
first, like,
Yeah.
big.
But I know that most fans of the franchise
Right.
hate that one in particular. But I kind of like that one a lot.
I think it's not so bad. I think when they went back and corrected a couple things like in the CG and stuff, and like it's definitely I think it's fine. The way I can only describe it to stay with the theme of our podcast.
Yeah.
It feels like a BJ's menu where it's like the menu is all over. Like it's like, dude, seriously, you guys have pizza and you have chicken wings and you have burgers and you have meatloaf. Like what the hell? But if you try anything on the menu, not so bad.
It's
Like,
all right.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't necessarily eat them together, but it is like being at a table where someone is eating meatloaf and another person's like eating like a fancy pasta, whatever, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? But no one's complaining.
But yeah, it always like kind of scratches the itch a little bit. So
and I didn't check. I don't know if you had checked I don't know what entry into the franchise this is. If you include
including
the Alien
AVP movies.
Yeah, so there's Alien 1, 2, and 3, and then there was Resurrection, so that's 4. And then there was Alien versus Predator, and then Alien versus Predator
2.
like whatever that one was called. And then there was Prometheus, and then there was what was the other one? Prometheus, and then like there's another one, right? After Prometheus,
I can't think of it right now.
Isolation or something like that. No, that's a video game. Isolation actually is a video game. But yeah, so there's another one. So this is technically, I guess, the 8th entry into the series.
Oh, geez, really?
I think so. I mean, you can double check me, but
let's see.
I'm almost sure this
Covenant.
is Covenant. Yeah, so it's Prometheus, Covenant, and then so it'd be this one. And this one,
if you don't include any of the AVPs, I guess this is the 7th.
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But there's at least 2 AVP movies, I think.
Yeah.
1 and 2, maybe 3.
Did I miss
I'm not
something?
sure.
Did I miss one in there? Do you have the list?
Well, yeah, just kind of a quick Google says Alien from 1979,
Right.
Aliens 86, Alien 3 92, Resurrection 97, Prometheus 2012, and Covenant 2017.
Okay, yeah.
Also,
that makes
not
sense.
including but the franchise. Let me see what Wikipedia
That goes to me
says.
because there actually is like I don't know if they consider Isolation the video game as part of the
Oh, is the lore?
because I played some of it. I didn't get to finish it.
So there's 3 Alien versus Predator movies.
Oh, there's 3.
Oh wait, there's 2. Alien versus Predator and Alien versus Predator Requiem. First one from 2004, second one from 2007.
That's right, fucking Requiem. Yeah. Okay.
One of them was pretty good. I think the first one was pretty good.
I don't
know.
Well, so I think it's good that we call out those just really quick because I do feel, I guess, if we're going to talk about,
there's like a bunch of short films.
Oh no, I'm
shit ton.
sure there is, and there's probably there's tons of comic books on this stuff.
Oh.
Okay, so
There's a play as well.
you
remember the high school?
The kids,
high school or
kids.
middle school?
Yeah.
That's
right.
Super cute.
That was it wasn't super cute.
Okay, badass.
It was
sorry,
amazing.
I'm not allowed to say cute.
Well, now when it comes to aliens aren't cute.
It's so cute.
So yeah, we're talking about 2024 Alien Romulus. We saw that today. And speaking of comic books and speaking of Alien versus Predator, this movie, in my opinion, I mean, I'll sort of kick it off of, I think aesthetically and just visuals and so I'm trying to remember, this is supposed to happen, maybe I'll check the trivia here, but this is supposed to happen after Aliens, I think. I think it's between Alien and Aliens, I think.
Oh, between that. I mean, that makes sense because
yeah, I think that sounds right.
Yeah, because the opening shot, spoilers, by the way, probably gonna have spoilers in this one. But
we'll try to be spoiler light, but I think there's one point here in the podcast.
Yeah, no, we got to talk about some.
We got to talk about some stuff, so we'll have to
Yeah
open it up a little bit.
But yeah, like in the very first shot, they're scavenging the Nostromo. So at the very least, it's after the first one.
Wait, are they that they're not?
Mhm.
That's not the Nostromo.
Yeah, they're
You're
where
right.
they pick up the
You're right. Right. There's
like
like
the very
there's like a double. There's like a double beginning or something.
I guess.
I guess. Well, there's I guess what you would call a cold open.
Okay.
I guess you could say where like an event happens in the very beginning, and that is on the Nostromo.
It's like kind of a bookend.
Right, and then we kind of get like the real intro or whatever, however you want to say that. But so yeah, I want to say this then falls between Alien and Aliens.
Okay.
In the world of Alien. So yeah, I thought you have to give props to these guys for really going above and beyond to make sure that the aesthetic of Alien matched in terms of like the greebles and the grunginess and the nastiness of like that world.
Oh yeah, it's the mining planet.
Yeah.
Pretty. Yeah. I kind of it gave a lot of I don't know. It felt Blade Runner-y almost with how lived in it felt. It felt real. Just super. I don't know. It was really impressive, and it was actually made the story that much more interesting. I felt.
It has a certain well, I would even go one step further back. The intro like logo treatment and the way that they tried to just give it this like we fit in this universe.
Yeah. I did notice that detail because I thought when we sat in the theater and the intro card started rolling, I was like, why did they pick that font? It looks like super I don't know, outdated.
Strange. Yes, yeah.
Almost. And it's just some random font that they found, and it's just whatever, we don't care. But when we rewatched the original tonight, it's like, oh, they used the exact same kind of introduction pieces, which was really gotta appreciate the nod.
Yeah, and I liked even the way the shots in space felt. Like even though like nowadays you're gonna use CG, it just makes sense. So everybody get over it. And
you mean they didn't shoot this in space for real?
They didn't shoot in space.
No real spaceships.
It was all practical. Like,
Shut up.
Like once a great person of this industry who's I like to consider a personal friend of mine.
He's not.
If he's listening to this, I apologize that you're like, wait, who the hell's this guy?
In his headcanon.
In my headcanon, because I got to meet him once.
Best friends.
He was a super nice guy. So Fawn Davis, who works in the indie industry of model making and the world of CG, when we talked and he talked about it, it's always about a marriage between the two. It needs to be like there's so much you can learn from that. Even the way that the opening sort of plays out, it almost feels like that's how you would have filmed like models or
I can see that.
Like bigatures, I guess is what they would call them. And it just kind of had that feel. And then like the grunginess, the griminess and everything, the music was like a nice sort of layer on top of all that.
You know how much they spent on this movie, their budget?
No, I didn't look at it.
$80 million.
That's it?
That's crazy, right?
Damn.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, and I think that's an interesting point because that's something I want to come back around to a little bit later. So kind of going into the I guess like the lore of all of this. I liked how. So I guess to kind of get into the movie just a little bit, there's the cold opening sequence like you had mentioned. It sort of just sets everything up. And then from there, the movie is about, I guess, the people. I don't remember the name of the planet that they're on, but
it's a mining planet.
Yeah, it's just
that's basically funded by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
Yeah.
They're mining, I don't know, some kind of ore or something.
Yeah, it's classic. And I love that. It was just a classic, like, they're just there to
work.
Grab the resources, and it's a lot of work for people.
Yeah, and it's basically like indentured servitude because they work within a contract, but then you find out the main character is like, oh, we're going to extend this contract. Anyway, good luck next time. Maybe we'll let you off the planet eventually.
Yeah, because it's in hours, right? And so the way they calculate, it's like, probably like another 5 years you'll be here. And it's just like,
right.
God
And
damn.
the idea is they can't themselves leave the planet because the corporation owns the spacecrafts that have the cryo sleep technology.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So they can't just fly off willy nilly because the next, I guess, habitable planet needs that cryo sleep to be able to get there.
It's
a good setup.
It's a great setup because it's very it's not, they could have leaned into a lot more of look at how corporations are
how
destroying
evil, blah, blah,
because
blah.
basically they literally ship you to a place where you can't leave.
You're stuck. You can't quit.
Yeah, you can't quit. There's nothing else you can do.
There's no quiet quitting.
But I feel like you get all that sort of backstory in just the visuals in the beginning, that Blade Runner kind of shanty town looking sort of place.
Yeah, nobody really wants to be there and everything's dirty and dingy. You're trying to scrape by. And you're just trying to survive basically. It's not really some place anybody wants to be.
It's like those old when you and I have driven south and we go through those small Texas towns where they're not really much left there because when there was oil there were a lot of people, and now that there isn't, it's kind of not like it's run down completely, but you can tell there was a story there of there was money and now there's no money.
Right.
And so this place is nearing somewhere on the back end of that where it's clearly they don't care. So they're not really upkeeping this place. And it looks like it's covered with prostitutes and gambling and
just the shadiest of really kind of the dregs basically of society because the corporation doesn't care about them.
Right. And they probably did at some point, and now they're
they cared to get them there. You know what I mean?
And they were hey, we're going to have housing. We're going to have all these buildings because they had all those buildings and stuff. They look cool. But now they look like no one's cared for them because they're probably you know what? This planet's probably down to this last 10% of whatever we're going to be able to grab out of it.
Sure.
Because now it sounds like they're going deep into the planet.
Oh, yeah. There's this insinuation, I guess, that it's getting more and more dangerous to mine for whatever it is they're mining
Which probably means they're getting down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
And so they set that up, which is great. And so we meet our main character, our main, I guess, hero, which was her name was
Callie or Kaylee Spenny is her
Rain. Oh, that's
her
right.
real name.
Rain was her name.
Her character name. Yes.
Because it was right as rain. So yeah, we're introduced to Rain pretty early on, who I guess is substituting in for our updated Ripley.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Andy, who it was kind of interesting. I really liked the character of Andy. So Andy is one of our, I guess we'll try to, I don't know. We'll try to be spoiler light here, but Andy gets introduced pretty early on, and that's a really cool, character, I feel like.
For me, he was kind of the standout, honestly.
Yeah.
Even more than the main character, who was amazing. As an actor, she was really great, but the character itself, I thought he was more fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, he was great. And I feel like it's an interesting take because wasn't Prometheus and Covenant also, I wouldn't say it's the main character, but
I'm kind of a key character.
He's
really
a key character.
Michael Fassbender's character.
Fassbender.
David?
Yeah, that's right. And so I feel like that's really interesting. And then we get introduced to Taylor and Kay and Bjorn, who are all played by their respective characters.
Those are friends, right?
Yeah, those are the three other friends. Oh, and Navarro is the one with the shaved head.
Yeah.
And so, basically, the quick gist of it. I mean, to be honest, it's a very simple setup, which I think is great.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that they don't go too deep into the exposition of Weyland-Yutani this and looking for whatever that.
But they set up the dread and all the man, this sucks really, really well, and not doing a whole lot other than the sets and the build up to that. So basically, Tyler, who I don't think anybody's a love interest to anybody,
I think it's insinuated that they used to be together.
Maybe, yeah. I think Bjorn and Navarro are together, which is the guy with the kind of curly hair is Bjorn. He's the one with a real thick English accent.
I think they were just buddies, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
It's very ambiguous a little bit on how they all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
Other than one of them's the sister of the guy and the other one's a cousin of the guy. So there's just kind of just a group. This your typical group of
Yeah.
similar aged people, basically.
That have probably they've formed a little bond through this work.
Because they're stuck there.
Yeah, this work that they have to do. Yeah, I think Kay is the sister of Tyler, who is our tall, very well built, standout.
Yeah, the classic, tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah, he's the classic D&D
the love interest.
Yeah, he's like your generic
handsome
character who's like the warrior, warrior class. But so yeah, I guess the four of them. Well, Kay or Rain is trying to do her paperwork to get off the planet because she says that she's done all the work she needs to do. Turns out that the corporation's like, no, you haven't.
No, you should stay.
We decided, we're going to just up that a little bit. It's not much.
5
just
years.
Another 5 years. Yeah.
No big deal. And she's like, well, that sucks.
And through that process, we learned that she is basically, I mean, I don't think she's a kid. She's much older, but she's without parents, so she's somewhat orphaned. No mom, no dad, no siblings. They were all killed in the mining.
I think, and she did say that they died in the mine.
Yeah. And that seems to be like a common thing.
Yeah.
Because they show another, again, some really good visual storytelling.
Good backgrounds, yeah.
When she's up on the surface and they see the literal canary going down into the coal mines.
Yeah.
That's a great...
Well, even the people on the street talking about man, it's getting crazy dangerous or whatever. It's just people passing by talking about it. So it's definitely insinuated pretty heavily that she shouldn't live there anymore. Yeah,
well, and
there's
not even the sun anymore because I think they've ruined the planet so much that
oh, I guess that's true. That's all
the smog or whatever it is they're doing for mining has literally just now blocked out the sun.
Yeah, and there's no daylight anymore.
Yeah, so it's just a dark planet by its own doing. It's not some sort of crazy sort of atmosphere. It's just what the corporation has done. So yeah, it's a very much I want to get off this planet. And so the four of them, Tyler, Kay, Bjorn, and Navarro basically approach her and say hey, so we've got some info, and basically there is something that people are scavenging literally up above the planet in the upper atmosphere, or I guess in the, not even the atmosphere. It would be
it's up in space.
It'd be up in space,
but not that far, I guess.
Yeah, no,
from the planet.
Just probably out above the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it's they were just that there's a good chance that they had somehow collected info that there are cryo chambers on there, and if they can get a hold of those, then they don't need to be waiting on anybody,
the corporation, to let them go, because that way they can just scavenge what they need. And so that they can, hypersleep their way to wherever they want to go. Because
it's a 9-year...
that's right.
It's a 9-year travel.
It's a 9-year trip to the closest place that they want to be, it sounds like.
Right. So yeah, basically that's, I mean, honestly, that's the whole thing, right? It's we just need to go get this equipment.
Really easy. 30 minutes in and out.
and let's go do it. It seems a little sketchy, but it's okay, it sounds doable. Let's do it. So everybody agrees. I mean, there's obviously a little bit of exposition, a little bit of back and forth there with the characters, but don't really want to give any of that away. But so there's a little bit of back and forth, and then it just kind of goes into it. Then we kind of get the setup, which is all right, let's get on our ship, let's go jump up into space, and let's see what we can make this thing happen. In particular, they want to bring Andy. And I guess, sort of mild spoiler, I guess we were trying to avoid it, but I guess kind of part of the story. So Andy is an android, and we see that from the onset. He is he's an android from the corporation, from the Wayland Corporation.
I guess he was part of, what is it called? The terraforming, I don't know. I think it's something like that. He helped, or his model of androids help colonize planets, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
So his part in all of that was pretty significant, but I guess once the planet got going, he got disposed or something, and it's insinuated, it's said, I think, at some point that Rain's family
I think the
dad like reprogrammed him and kind of fixed him up a little bit, but he's obviously still damaged. He doesn't have a lot of his motor skills, and he has a hard time. Like he's like talks real slow and
like he almost like it's funny because before I realized he was an android, I thought he was like this character on the spectrum or
like very childlike almost.
Yeah, had a stutter, would kind of
had like kind of tics, physical tics, and
like almost didn't know how to complete sentences. But
and like he had certain mannerisms, and he would even he would repeat like dad jokes.
Yeah,
and
that the dad programmed in.
Yeah. It was very it was almost, it's like endearing, right? Because he's kind of a simple kind of person, but then you find out that why.
Yeah, and I really like that. I thought that's a well-written character. Like it
was so fascinating actually.
Because you really feel something for this character pretty early on, even though it's an android.
Right.
But just the quick setup of but it's like effectively your dad's last. Like it's the last thing you have that reminds you of your parents or your attachment.
Yeah.
They never even really go into how close she was with their parents or anything like that. But you don't have to get all that
because it's told.
Great setup.
Yeah, it's told that the dad programmed Andy so that Andy would always look out for Rain.
Right.
So it's very sweet.
That's the prime directive.
His prime directive is to protect Rain.
Yeah, do whatever.
Look out for Rain.
Yeah. Which was, I mean, that's just really well done. And so we get that's right. So the four of them want to make sure that they can do this with Rain's help. Obviously, they want to offer her like a cryo chamber, but they need Andy because they said that this is a Wayland ship, or they say that it's a ship, and that they need Andy because since he's like
an android built by the corporation,
that he should be able to have access to all that stuff and shouldn't be a problem. So it's literally like,
and it won't like raise red flags.
Right. It should just be like in and out.
Literally, he is the key, basically.
Yep. He should be able to open everything and get out. So then they have, they go ahead and agree. They all take off, on a junker ship looking thing, which is again, just kind of going back to the set dressing and like the world building and stuff. Man, that ship was great.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's functional. It wasn't very,
and you can kind of feel like it was probably falling apart a little bit. It had a lot of texture.
It had a purpose. That ship,
it
was a, it was a mining ship, and it was there for just transport and the interior,
not comfort for sure.
Yeah, the interior was very reminiscent of the original Alien, where, which I'm pretty sure that we just watched the original Alien. I mean, they were miners and they were also like,
they were a transport ship, I think.
Right. So
Ripley's crew was like literally transporting all the stuff that was being mined, I guess.
Right. But they also had, and I feel like, so they had a science crew, and then they had like they almost had like the tiers of like.
Yeah, it was more official with Ripley's crew, but this crew is just kind of ragtag.
They're all the bottom.
It's all
guys.
it's the kids of the people that had moved to the planet to work, basically.
Who have like produced offspring that are basically just workers at this point. So they've really never had any opportunity other than this.
Right.
And so when they get into that ship, like I said, the monitors, like the CRT-ness of monitors, and like the overuse of like what we thought space, well, not that what we thought what space would look like, but I guess what we thought in the 60s space would look like going into the 70s, of like, if it's very industrial and it's all practical, like it wouldn't be all fancy. It would be very like matter of fact.
Yeah.
So the amount of buttons and how like levers and everything sort of worked to like, that was really cool. Like I loved that sort of, and everything, like I said, it looked like it had function. Like you could see where the compartments like actually like snap together, because you would probably build ships that way. Like just all that stuff I thought was really great.
Well thought out.
Yeah.
And it was a good homage to the original.
Yeah. I think and we'll talk about Fede Alvarez here like in a minute, but I feel like there was a lot of, I can almost hear the conversations of him saying, I know it's going to cost a little bit of money, but we need to make sure that we don't fuck this up, because we need to make sure that the look is just right. And this is important to him. Because I want to say, like, Fede Alvarez is, I think he's about my age, if not just slightly older.
Yeah.
I think he's got to be, like, no more than his mid to early 50s, if I had to guess. But I feel like he's a kid that also grew up around this kind of stuff. So much like for some people it's Star Wars, for some people it's Aliens.
He's 46.
46. Oh, fuck. He's younger than I am.
All right.
Motherfucker.
Calm down.
Well, but the point is like, and I feel this way too, right? And I've worked with a lot of people and art directors that, like, we were very particular about certain things because it's like, nope, this we got to make sure this, because it matters a ton.
Yeah.
Right. And then, like, even having been involved with Star Wars, the Star Wars series and other stuff like that, like, it is very, very like particular because it sort of like kicks off like a visual, like, sensor that you if it's done incorrectly, you almost like, it's like an uncanny valley. You can see it real quick and go like, no, bullshit. Like, I don't
pick it up real fast.
Yeah. And so, not to go on a tangent, but when you look at like fan art, or if you look at like what Star Wars and other movies have done since the original, like, they try to stick to some of them, and some of them are kind of like, I think you went a little bit outside the bounds of what would probably be allowed. But I think in Romulus, I feel like they nailed it, like, across the board. Like, I don't think anything. I mean, I think there were a few things that maybe stuck out just like a little bit, but it's probably because they can't find CRT monitors or enough of them to put them in. They're going to have to fake it. Yeah. And they're going to have to, like, recreate those images digitally. Partly because I probably own all the CRTs.
That you have them all here in the Southwest.
Yeah. Region. I always trip the breaker whenever. Well, anyway, so I thought that was a cool sequence too, when they're like breaking through the atmosphere of like how terrible like space travel is and how frightening it is to like get out of the atmosphere, especially a terrible smog dense like destroyed atmosphere.
Do you remember this whatever, I'm gonna just keep going off tangent because I love like space movies and space horror and all that stuff. Do you remember in that one episode of Battlestar Galactica where they, in the new one, the reboot with Edward James Olmos, and they find the planet and they basically like land. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was such a
it's like one of the greatest
scene.
moments.
It was incredible
in television.
Yeah, for
I think
for
I stood
television,
up and fist pumped it.
I think we clapped when we watched it because it was such.
You're talking about the prison escape.
Yeah,
like the episode. Yeah.
It was such an incredible like.
Yeah, that was intense
scene. But it felt like this scene in Romulus was the reverse of that because they were like pushing up against like. It felt like dense atmosphere. Yeah, or something.
And I thought it was really interesting too because they spent a long time on that sequence. Like that was a pretty long sequence.
It's rad.
But it was rad. But like when you think about it from a storytelling standpoint, like you're really explaining or showing like how dangerous space travel is and how all of this
and
is
how
dangerous.
Not easy it is, right? And how like you're saying, like you have to feel how dangerous it is for them. Not even to just like leave the planet, but just to like hop outside the atmosphere to get to this one vessel to get to leave the planet. Like the whole Enterprise is just fraught. And you definitely feel that with just this little bit that they have to do. Yeah. It's already dangerous.
Well, that's what I was saying. I find it interesting because like from an editing standpoint, like if I was editing this film, I may have cut down that scene a little bit, but in the end, like it was really good. Like I don't think
it's good at selling what it was that they were doing.
Well, it sets the stages for a lot of things kind of going forward. Like it almost sets the ground for reality, the reality that we're going to be taking place in for the rest of the movie. Even though like there are some other things that it's very there are things that break there that you're like, oh, like what about this? What about that? Like blah blah blah. Yeah. But I liked that sequence, and like I said, it went on really long, but like once they broke through the upper atmosphere, it was like, whoa, that was really cool. Even though like there's no alien, there's no like there's no scariness other than the fact that this thing might fucking
fall apart.
It may just like implode on itself, right, or something. And I thought that was really great. So then they reach the I guess just above the atmosphere, and they're now in space. And I think immediately Rain is kind of like, what the fuck? I thought we were going to go to a spaceship.
Yeah.
That's no spaceship. That's a fucking like. That's a well. It's not a. It's not a.
It's not a moon.
Yeah, it's not a moon. It was actually like a.
I guess like a station, like a space station almost.
Yeah, it was not a starship or a spaceship or anything. It definitely was a.
It's huge.
It was huge. It was definitely yeah. It's your classic science fiction star station, or even not even classic. I mean, we do that now, but it's got the outer ring so that it can create artificial gravity, and it's massive, right? And it's just outside of the upper atmosphere. Well, I guess it's not right there, but it's close enough where they can see it.
Yeah.
Because it is above and hovering. I guess it's kind of been pulled into the gravity of another planet that's nearby that has like a giant
rings.
Giant rings.
Like Saturn. So it wasn't that planet that has the rings? The one that they were on didn't have the rings? I wasn't clear on that.
I'm not sure. The framing of that was a little strange. Maybe it was that
I think
planet.
Maybe it was.
But it seems, I don't know. I'm not sure how that would work, but
I mean,
because it seems like they would be pulling itself into the gravity and not away from the planet.
I don't know how rings work.
Well, it's not the rings. It's just like, because it's in an orbit, right? It has to be orbiting somewhere. And so it's going to have gravity.
So you're immediately introduced to the fact that, it's like a giant space vessel, but also whatever planet it is near to has basically like ice rings like Saturn does. So it adds another element of dangers because obviously you don't want to run into the rings.
Well, it turns out that the star station that's up there is, I guess the way they're saying is it is floating away from the planet, so it is headed towards the rings.
Yeah, it's on like a collision course.
Yeah, and I think they were saying like, it's like basically a month from like colliding in there, and I think that's also part of the heist,
feel.
It's part of the heist like setup in them pitching to Rain, saying like, no one's given a shit up to this point, and it's 30 days from like colliding into the rings. Clearly, they don't
risk.
care.
There's very little risk, and nobody's out there. And if it's not going to be us scavenging, it's going to be somebody else.
Could be somebody. Yeah, we might as well do it for the purpose of the good. So, so they make their way up there. They're able to check it out. They get into the ship, and so far so good. Like everything is going great. Like Andy's able to get them in. They're able to maneuver around. And they almost find the cryo chambers like almost immediately. Yeah. But then they quickly realize that the cryo chambers do not have enough
battery or
no,
fuel,
it's the fuel. It's the cryo fuel, which I guess is like the cold
the juice.
It's I don't think it's liquid nitrogen, but it is some form of liquid. It might actually.
I don't know.
Liquid nitrogen. Or whatever, but they say cryo fuel. Which we assume is cold. And so Taylor, or Tyler, I don't remember I think it's Taylor. So Taylor is like, well, shit, we're here and I don't want to give up because they need 9 years to get to the planet that they're wanting to get to.
Yeah, and the chambers that they find only has enough juice for 5 years. So it's
even less. I think it's like 3.
Oh, yeah. It's like not going to get them anywhere.
Yeah, it's not going to get them anywhere close. So they're going to need more cryo fuel, and so they're kind of pissed initially because they're like, fuck.
But he's like, it's a big ass station. I'm sure there's more somewhere.
There has to be.
There's
cryo
no way. Yeah,
fuel
for
here.
like a space station this big, there's no way this is the only chamber to begin with. Like, but there's also more fuel somewhere.
Right, and so he goes looking for the fuel, and then you quickly start seeing the setting and the space around there. So I would say, at this point, going forward, there's probably going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would say like check it out. Maybe jump to the maybe we'll put it in the notes, but we'll jump to the food part on the back end. But just as an FYI, from this point going forward, there's probably going to be a fair amount of spoilers. Hopefully this episode comes out like it's been it's been like weeks or almost
backlogged.
A month. We're pretty backlogged, so
pretty heavy.
Hopefully it's like a month or a month and a half before anybody hears this. Anyway, spoilers going forward. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a little sound, wah, 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 or whatever. Our engineer Hank is telling us to move it along. All right, so spoilers going forward. So they get into the starship. And they start poking around for cryo fuel. I actually loved sort of the thinking behind how this is set up. So they're starting to notice that there's a lot of weird shit like around, and you get your classic alien, like there's a giant hole like in the spaceship. Yeah. Or in the starship on multiple floors that you can see down.
Like all the way down, like multiple levels.
Yeah. So clearly an alien has been gutted or
bled out or something.
Yeah, he bled out or something. He bled out a lot. Yeah. Because it fucking went like pretty far.
Through most of the ship.
Yeah. And so, and they also run into another android, or half an android, which I mean.
Yeah.
It was pretty good up to this point. Like there hasn't really been much. Like it's a lot of
setup.
It's a lot of like turning the rubber band.
Yeah.
Really starting to build up that tension. And this is a big point of that. Of we're now giving you the visual set dressing of like some shit's gone down.
Yeah.
And they don't think much of it though. They're kind of like, it's probably other scavengers,
or like chemical spill is what she said, or some kind of accident, or
they treat it like whatever.
Yeah, they're not super concerned about why it's deserted and abandoned and nobody's there.
And from their perspective, it would not be like they don't know anything about aliens or any of these things, which I kind of like that. And I think as a little bit of an aside, I would say for a new generation who have never seen the Alien movies, or like, let's say like a 16-year-old who's never seen it and had their parents take them, this is their first Alien movie.
It's pretty solid.
I think the tension building up to this point, and they're not familiar with like what's about to happen.
Yeah.
We are, but I actually kind of liked how that was played out because they could have been very heavy-handed on the alien, like, oh, well, what, you don't know what an alien is, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But, I mean...
But no, nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, us 50-year-olds, like, we're, like, of course, we know. I mean, fuck, I got a face hugger hanging on the, on this mic stand over here right now.
He's just chilling.
Yeah, he's just hanging out. But, so thinking about it from that perspective, I actually think that's really cool, that the way that they approach this, that they were really thinking about a new audience of alien
I didn't think of that. That's a good point. But yeah, it was coming at it from like fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't trying to explain too much, and it wasn't trying to deep dive too much into the lore or anything.
Because I did like that.
It
could be a chemical spill. It could have been weapon.
It could have been anything.
There's a number of things that could have explained this.
Yeah. Anyway, we have to get the cryo chambers. So who cares?
Yeah, and those guys are like, I don't know, whatever. So let's go look for that fuel.
Right.
So I like that. And then they kind of go looking for the fuel, and then they reach like what appears to be sort of a science lab or some sort of...
Yeah, and it's huge.
Yeah.
And it looks like there must have been some kind of leak because there's water all over the floor. It's like actually like kind of halfway... The water's halfway up their shin, right? Like they're kind of wading around in it, but they find all of this fuel tanks. And they start pulling them, and they're getting ready to... this is going to be plenty.
Actually, there's one step before that, because I forget... They get to that door, but Andy cannot open the door because
he doesn't have
the right credentials.
Yeah, he doesn't have.
And so they're like, oh shit, or no. He's able to get in initially, but
that's right. He's able to get into the science lab.
Right. The android that we ran into earlier actually plays a part into all this, but he is correct. Like something has happened in there, but. Not enough to
like shut it down or whatever. It's just like it's obviously a science lab. There's a bunch of creepy looking drawers but they have like a shit ton of the cryo fuel.
Right.
So they're like, oh, that's kind of weird that they're all here, but there's plenty and we can take even just a couple is going to be enough for their trip.
So they slowly start taking them out, and I looked over to you in the movie because I was like, oh, this is actually really well thought out.
It's a great setup.
Because it's like, yep, we found all this fuel. What could they ever be like trying to keep?
Why are they here? That's so weird. In a science lab, that's so not suspicious at all.
And so as they are disconnecting the cryo fuel, all these sort of alarms start going off because they have cryo froze or cryo sleeping. I don't know, whatever you call it. They have cryo frozen the face huggers that are all in their little tubes or... Actually, they look like vacuum
They're
form.
like, I mean, if their budget was $80 million, they probably were just
bags.
just hanging out in Ziploc bags.
It's like those
in the freezer.
It's like those ones you get at Costco that are like heavy duty plastic. But So as they're doing this, the temperature is rising on the cryo bags or whatever.
Because they pulled all the fuel.
Right. They're getting the ones that have the most amount of fuel.
Right.
Because he's like, oh,
so
snap,
it's
great.
not enough to sustain the lab. And so it triggers this response from the emergency system of closing off the lab. And like now they're stuck in there because even Andy can't open it because it has to be a science officer that opens it. And they're like, well, what the fuck? How do we get out of here?
Yeah.
And as that's happening, the thawing out is happening.
Yeah.
With the face huggers.
A lot of them.
Oh, there's so many. There's like hundreds of them. It's crazy.
Man.
It's like such.
Yeah.
It's like the worst possible.
Yeah. So that leads to like, the door shuts behind them because they've now triggered, effectively like, you gone done fucked up like in alarm, and the door closes behind them because the alien or the facehuggers are now waking up. Rain and I forget her name. I had it here. Rain and Navarro are gonna jump in and see if they can go kind of help out the situation. And I guess as they're passing through, they realize that the half android that's left behind is still operational. And Rain, who I guess is familiar with how the systems of all those work, basically says like, "Oh, you know what? I need to. If we grab his whatever his memory stick or whatever it is that he has,
his zip drive.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, his jazz drive, because it's probably a lot of data. That's for the old school. So you know, it pulls out the zip drive and takes it with him and says, "Here, give this to Andy because and then that way he can."
They can reach through like a broken piece of the door.
Yeah. And if we put this in there, if we give this to him, it'll likely give him the credentials that you need. And so they do that. And that itself is like, actually, it was a very, almost like an homage to Evil Dead, when they give Andy the zip drive and put it in his head. And then like his eyes roll back.
Yeah. It was almost like a possession scene.
Yeah. His eyes roll back and you get like a window, like a blue screen of death and
he's so creepy because he's just frozen there in like his arms are up and it was super creepy. It's just he's just standing in the middle of the room, and I guess he's downloading a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah, he's like rebooting, and he's downloading some stuff off the jazz drive, and just that whole sequence because he's not moving, but now the aliens are defrosting, or they're kind of like, they're just like
they're just getting ready to go.
Yeah, they're just kind of it's kind of like when our fridge goes out, or the. Ugh. I'm glad we have a new fridge, but it's almost like well, crap. I guess we're gonna have to make use of the chicken and the ham and this and the hot dogs because like they're all just flopping to the ground out of their plastic bags because they're all slimy and
they're ready. They're ready to face hug some people.
Yeah, and Bjorn and Taylor have not noticed that this is actually happening. Because
they're flopping in the water.
Yeah.
And since the water is so deep, they're just kind of swimming around.
It's deep enough, right?
Yeah.
Like not too deep, but just the right amount of deepness where
and
it's
make
dark
for a creepy scene. Obviously.
Yeah. That whole sequence, I mean, we obviously won't spoil that, but like, I mean, that whole sequence was
rad.
Wow.
It was super it was super well done with not a lot, if that makes sense. I mean, I know there was like a bajillion face huggers, but you get that frightened sense of quickly becoming overwhelmed.
Right.
But they don't show a lot, which I super appreciate because that's how they did back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Like they just showed like the wiggling in the water.
Yeah. Again, we haven't seen a whole lot. This is like a good, we're almost like 40 minutes into the movie.
I don't know if it's 30. That long, but maybe.
It's a good chunk, at least 30 minutes into the movie, and we still haven't really seen any, like, there's tension building for sure.
Yeah.
With the music and the atmosphere and everything, but we haven't seen anything visually, or maybe a few hints here and there, but nothing major. This is like the first big moment that you get, and that was pretty awesome.
It was a good payoff.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know how much we're gonna talk about it because I want people to be able to watch and enjoy what happens, but yeah, like they managed to kind of wiggle out of that situation.
Yeah.
And but with but one of them gets into trouble, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess to be fair, like that was, you do see some of that in the trailer, so I guess it shouldn't be
really?
Shouldn't be a huge surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the face huggers gets one of them.
Gets to Navarro.
Okay.
And yeah, because you do see that in the trailer, which they just quickly introduce a prop, which is like the X-ray machine.
Which I love, honestly.
The handheld X-ray
that was
machine.
a really it's this so funny in this movie, but they introduce so many either scenarios or props that are obviously like, what is the term for it in stage? Is it like the Chekhov's gun, where they show you and then it's like, don't forget about this. We'll come back to this.
We'll come back to it later.
And they do that so much in this movie, and it was like really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, I'm sure that's gonna be important. And the X-ray machine was
the handheld
X-ray machine was part of that, because they were just playing around with it initially. Actually, Navarro was playing around with it initially, just on her arm, but then she remembers that she has it once she's, I guess, implanted with the chest burster, and you see it pounding on her chest. It's so wild. It's awesome. It was such a good gimmick.
Yeah. Yeah. It absolutely was. Yeah, we skipped a couple things there, but it's fine. Like, we'll leave that for the movie, of how they were able to get the face hugger off. But, you know, it's like, okay, that's cool. But, like, I agree with you.
They just planted a lot of cool devices throughout the movie that I feel like every single one of them paid off.
Well, and that's what I was going to say earlier. It's like, for as many short films and as many comic books as there are in this series, this movie to me felt like a well-written Dark Horse, like, comic book, like, series where, like, these are people we don't know. They have no relationship to anybody in the franchise. They're just in the world, and there happens to be aliens in the world. And like you said, like, they have these devices that it's like, well, that wasn't in the movie. It's like, yeah, but this is a different place. This is a different ship. These are all different sort of...
Right. The circumstances are different.
It's situational to what's there. So yeah, everything that was brought up was really neat and cool.
Yeah.
And it felt very, like, I don't want to say fan fiction-y, but this is why, and I apologize, I was reading a little bit of the trivia here, and it caught my eye because I felt this way, and it turns out it's kind of true. So just, I guess, to pause for a moment, it sounds like this story, or at least like the beats of this idea, came from Fede Alvarez when he was watching, I guess, like outtakes or clips that weren't used in the movie, and came up with sort of this scenario.
Oh, the first movie, or like all the movies?
It sounds. It was an outtake from Aliens, so the second one.
Oh, interesting.
But I think, and it sort of, reads here in the trivia that, and this totally makes sense, and this totally like it like makes the mark of like him and a high school kid or a young kid, like when you're in those imaginative years,
just like playing
you're coming up with stories that, like, you know, it'd be cool if if there was like another ship in Aliens 2 that had like the back, like the Marine, or instead of the Marines, it was like the Navy SEAL Team 6 version. You know, when you write up, like,
and just making shit up as you go.
Those are fun, and I think a lot of times you're like, that'll never happen. Like, that's how this movie felt. It felt very much like I had a really cool idea. It kind of fit into all these things, but I'm okay with that. Like, if done well and done in a very respectful way to like the franchise, I thought, like, up to this point, like, it was a blast.
It was fun. It was super fun because you felt like it was done with a lot of reverence, I thought, for a lot of the movie. I don't know. It was just fun to watch. It was just they were doing a lot of setups,
right?
And then it was like there was even a point where they were talking about the ship's gravity is broken.
Oh yeah,
so it has to kick on and off every once in a while.
That ends up coming back,
and that's
around.
That's a big device in the movie. There's a couple other things I can't think of now, but that was a big one. The Andy as an android is kind of a big device in the movie too, as far as like what he can do, what he feels like doing, basically as this entity that shouldn't have feelings, but he does. As I don't know, there's so I like the world build. I know there's like already world building right in the Aliens franchise. But I like this story building that they did for this movie in particular, because it didn't go so deep in the lore that you kind of got lost in the forest basically.
Yeah.
For here, it's just like, no, it's just this story. They don't know shit about the aliens, so we don't know shit about the aliens, but we know what we want to put on the spaceship, and we know what we want them to do and how to get from point A to point B. And it was such a, I don't know, it was really well done, and I really enjoyed how they got from place to place and how they got from scene to scene.
Clearly, like, Fetty is like a huge fan of the franchise, and
we should talk about Fetty Alvarez.
Yeah, well, and I think so. I guess there isn't much more to the movie other than, like, I think big set moments that were great. And we can skip through all those because I think, basically it's like, oh, hey, they escape, and I think that's what we kind of eventually lead to. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff that kind of gets up to that point. But yeah, so I feel like the touches of, it's really funny because I think a lot of people, I mean, I haven't read anybody's reviews, and to be honest, like, our review, like anybody else's review, it's your opinion. And no one's really necessarily right or wrong. I would say, I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. I think it a little plain to the audience of alien people? Like, yeah, probably. Because
I think they've done it less than a lot of, like, the prequels that we've seen in other franchises.
But they touched on a lot of them.
No, I know, but I feel like they've woven it into their story well enough, at least like most of it, that you felt I felt like I was able to be kind of transported into the story that they were telling.
Sure.
I didn't necessarily it wasn't annoying how they would keep referencing the original franchise anyway.
Well, they talk about, like, the colonial marines. They talk about
that wasn't
Prometheus.
Too much of a stretch for me necessarily.
Yeah,
I think it was, and I think the important distinction is they didn't, like, drive it home too much. They didn't go overboard.
Yeah, it was there.
It was
as
just like mentioned quickly because
like
it
a
was
wink, like a real quick wink. Like,
yeah, but it wasn't just belabored over and over.
Like, oh, the Prometheus, you mean from 2014? Now available on Blu-ray and 4K. No. I agree with you. Like, I liked that, and again, I feel like that is something you would see in comic books, like in like a
just like a reference point, right?
Yes.
It's not necessarily a huge plot point. It's just like, within the universe, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple things that maybe I was kind of, I don't know, I didn't really necessarily know how to feel one way or the other was the Rook character. I don't know how to feel about the fact that they used, again, spoilers, but I guess they use an AI generated likeness of Ian Holm.
Oh yeah. Who was Ash in the original?
Ash in the original. I guess it's made to, you're made to believe, I guess, that this iteration is, his name is Rook, and he's part of that, I guess, class of androids that are, the interest is for the company and the corporation.
Well, there's science. Like, he's in the science.
Like, he's a science officer.
Right.
And I think, the corporation sent those guys out to retrieve, I guess, alien beings like this. I don't know how crazy I was about, like, I don't know why they couldn't have just used anybody else for it. No, like, I wasn't crazy about that.
I think that was the biggest of the winks. That was probably more of
the fan service.
That was actually a point at you wink, and then kind of like guns.
I mean, after I got over it, it wasn't too bad because they wrote the part well, that you can kind of buy into it, So
I mean, I think you can speak to, like, the quality of it's. I
just felt like it was unnecessary that it had to be like Ian Holm, because I feel like if you're saying that an android is an android, then just have it somebody else.
Well, but see, the only thing I would say to that a little bit, because I feel like it would make it slightly bigger, and I'm not one of those people that's like, oh man, the movie's great, and then it took me out. Like it's like really like it took you out of the theater and you left and you didn't came back, whatever. No. I guess for me though, going back to this is something new for new generation. If they wanted to, they could have referenced like, oh, this is based on the Ash model of
right.
Da. But see, a younger generation would be like, who the fuck's Ash? What are you talking about? I don't know any of that. So I think in a way, I actually liked that. I think it's fine that they used that likeness because much like we did, we came home tonight and we watched Alien. If let's just say a 17-year-old went to go watch this and was like, that was amazing. And his dad's like, oh, do you think that was cool? Let me show you the original, the OG.
The real thing, yeah.
And then you see that and you start to see the connection. Like, I actually think that's kind of neat. Even though, like, you can debate, like, the quality of the face reconstruction. And it definitely,
okay.
It definitely was not the best that we've seen. But it's an $80 million budget.
Yeah, I was going to say, you definitely see the budget.
This movie's going to make a lot of money for an $80 billion movie. And I guess to kind of go back to Fetty, like as a director, like I think he nailed this because this goes back. I mean, honestly, like he did, I think, a good job because he studied the original very carefully because the original doesn't have 50 like sets and locations like without the whatever. It's very contained.
Right.
Like outside of the Blade Runner-y sort of beginning and in the interior of the ship, and then once you get into the starship, like it's very, very contained.
Yeah.
And if they were smart about how they built out a lot of the stuff, they probably were maximized a lot of set, you know, and I feel like he did that really well in Evil Dead. He did that really well, like in Don't Breathe. Like, I think he brought that, like the hardworking sort of director mindset of like, I don't have a lot of money to spend here, and so we need to like maximize everything. And so the story and the visuals and everything needs to be very compact.
Yeah.
And I feel like the movie felt like that. And when it needed to breathe and get more like a bigger set, they provided it.
It was well balanced in that way. I thought that it still felt very like intimate, even though they were on this huge starship. But at the same time, you see the scale of how big the planet is and how big that spaceship is and where they are, how like isolated they are. I'm always super excited to see where Fede Alvarez is going because I think he's done some of the more interesting things that I've seen lately.
Yeah.
And it's funny because besides Don't Breathe, I feel like he, like kind of like us, he's a big fan of the old stuff and he's a big fan of rethinking the way, like approaching something in a new way, not just for, just for the hell of it to make money off of the franchise, but like really thinking about like a different direction that this story could go. And I loved his version of Evil Dead. And I know it's funny because I know that's very divisive
I'm
to
sure that's a very hot take
the
for some people.
Evil Dead fans, but I loved his version.
But it was good. It was fun. It was what movies should be. Is like it's a bloody good time.
Yeah.
Like
it's supposed to be exciting to think about and to talk about, right? And like we're always saying, like and how, to quote the great Joe Bob Briggs, the worst sin a movie can make is that it's boring.
Right.
And I don't know that I've seen yet a Fede Alvarez movie that's been boring.
Yeah.
He's always pushing for something different, and I really I love that because I feel like there's not a whole lot of filmmakers, especially within his budget, that are that brave as far as like, we're just whatever. We're just going to do this. I don't care.
And I know for some people he's very divisive of like, oh, he ruined this and he ruined that. Not that I'm an accomplished filmmaker, but having done some film work and then and also being involved with like in an industry of a lot of creative people. And it is very easy to just kind of say like, look, you need to think about the other people too, that are like putting in a lot of effort. Cause I do agree. Like it truly is a miracle that any piece of entertainment for profit gets
made,
right? Because there's a lot of voices, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of things. And I think what Fetty does really well is he listens but also he understands this is a business, and he is making sure that the people that hold the keys get their money because they want a lot of money out of this.
Right.
But the people that are going to be in the car that from the keys that he borrowed are going to have a hell of a time because he understands and tries to listen and make sure that he is addressing the needs of people like us of like, honestly, I want to be entertained, but when you're talking about a franchise that is like, is a pillar in not only like science fiction, but horror and like music and just style and everything, like it's very important that you treat that with respect. And so he strikes a really well balanced, like I'm sure I'm surprised that he still has hair and it's not all grayed out because that's a real hard line to walk on.
I think it's obvious from the movies that he makes though, like that he's also having fun telling these stories. Because you can tell that, like like you said, he's probably he seems very collaborative. He seems like he would listen to the other creative people. But I also think he has a very particular vision about his projects.
Yeah.
And he'll get there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not that he's uncompromising necessarily, but I feel like he probably has a very strong voice when he's, making all these sketches or scripts or whatever. Like, I feel like he knows what he wants.
Yeah. And I think he probably has like, I will not, like I cannot give up this and I cannot give
right.
Like I have my boundaries of what I know, like I will fight.
Yeah.
And I think that people like in those positions, if you're really good as a creative director or an art director or whatever, it's like, with hills you want to die on. And you know that some of them you're like, you know what, we can do that because if that's what, the people with the keys want, and we need this moment.
Sure.
And clearly they probably like, hey, you need you to work in a little bit of that Prometheus because it didn't sell so well, and we really love it if you could
go back and
whatever the case may be. Like, I think it can be done in a way that accomplishes all those goals. And at the end of the day, like Ridley Scott was attached to this. I mean, he is a producer and executive producer, and it sounds like there was a lot of collaboration there. And it's a very obviously it's a very important franchise to him. It probably I mean I think it's debatable, but I guess you could say like that's the franchise that made him who he is and allowed him to sort of take off from there. But for as old as Ridley Scott is, and to what it sounds like his initial take on all this was like, this is great, I love this and I love how you're treating this approach. And I guess the last thing I'll probably say to all that is this is exactly what the movie industry needs right now. Like we need like fun-filled rides that, yes, it's another, like I can hear the people already arguing of like, oh, it's not even an original like script and da-da-da. I get that. Like, I get it. It's another franchise that we've seen before, but like you were saying earlier, it's fresh ideas, fresh content. It just has, it's under the brand of Alien just kind of allow that and don't be so like caught up on like, we could have had like 5 totally original space ideas by this point. And it's like, man, that is very debatable. And I don't want to get into the whole, like, what it means to have, be a stakeholder in those things and how much money you can lose for this and that. It's like, that's 5 gambles over one pretty solid, like
sure bet.
Not even a sure bet because you look at like Furiosa and
that's true.
That wasn't really, it turned out not to be a sure bet. But at the end of the day though, right, it's like, allow the creative people to do the creative work,
right?
Give them that space, back them, and then you get a movie like this, which I thought was a lot of fun.
I think people bag a lot on sequels and prequels and remakes and stuff like that when they're not great, and then they tend to forget that it can be good, that it can have fresh ideas, that it can say something new, or at the very least, if none of that, that it can at least be really fun to watch. Still, you know what I mean?
You can change up the menu item. You can still be the original menu and still be like, you know what? I could see coming back here again because this is a good. I'm glad. I like what they did with the menu. They stay true to what this place is about, but what they've added to the menu, like helps bring a new audience, but you still got the originals there and the good stuff. So I think that kind of brings us to the portion of how do we pair this, right?
So that's a slick segue.
Yeah,
there.
thank you. I'm getting better at this. So I'm going to start because I know you were on the car ride home. You were struggling just a little bit. So I don't know if this will kind of help or endure or help spin up some ideas. But so my pairing, I guess you could, if you want to call it a pairing, it's not really a pairing so much. This is very. This is what I will say that this movie was able to do for me. It was very, it brought back a lot of memories of, I don't remember exactly when I saw this movie, but I do know I saw it way too young.
The first one?
The first one. And I may have seen Aliens first, because I think that was probably readily available at the video store. And I'm pretty sure my uncle was probably about my age, or actually, he was actually much younger. I think he would have been in like his 30s so he was the cool uncle, with the 8 or 9-year-old. So he's either in his late 20s or early 30s. And I remember, you see the cover of Aliens, and Aliens is like, back then you're hearing it's a great action movie, and it's a thrill ride is what I guess you would call it back then. Right. And it's kind of funny because like this one, you could say is a thrill ride, but like a modified version of that, because I would say like Aliens, the second one, is much more, it's almost not even horror. It's just pure action.
Action movie.
I mean, that is testosterone, like,
big guns. Yeah.
Big guns. And like,
it basically like redefined like the space action genre.
Yeah.
Like it basically, well, I don't know, redefined it, kind of started it.
But I love that level of intensity.
Yeah.
But then you take the original, and the original, which we just watched, which is like, I mean, honestly, that is 100% a horror movie.
Yeah, it's like a monster movie.
Yeah, it's the creepiest of creepy. And
it's so good at the tension building and this, setting
setup,
up the scene.
Yeah. You got nowhere to go, the isolation, the long travel, like I think the original pitch line was like, no one can hear you scream in space.
Oh, so good.
And
chills.
So you feel all that stuff, right? And so I feel like this movie was like literally a merger of those two things, really well done, right?
Okay,
because
I see that.
There's a lot of action in this movie, but there's a lot of tension building and horror, and there's enough across there. Yeah. And so what it reminded me of, or a lot of feelings that I have, is the feeling of long travel, that these guys, clearly are experiencing. Like it's just kind of funny. Like it's hard to describe, but they definitely were able to capture a lot of what you see from the original, in that this ragtag of four, like, are very, I don't know, they feel like some of the other characters in the original, where they're just kind of like, they've been on these long travels, and like they've just experienced a lot, and they look weathered, and they look tired as people, right? And for whatever reason, that reminded me of being in the 80s, and there were a lot of times where we would travel back and forth between my uncle's house and home, and an hour drive felt like,
when you're a little kid,
it felt like
forever.
Felt like forever. And I remember when we'd watch movies like this, and in particular, for whatever reason, Alien or Aliens made me feel this way, and it kind of makes me feel that with this movie. But cold fried chicken is somewhat of a comfort kind of food for me. Huh. And it's strange, and it's hard to explain, but we grew up on Church's chicken back home. That's all we had.
Oh, okay.
This is like pre Popeye's chicken. I think the only options you had were, if it was like a local dive, and we had a couple, but the places you could only get fried chicken was Church's Chicken and KFC. And we always went for Church's because it was cheaper. But there was always, for whatever reason, it felt like we would get chicken because it lasted longer. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
I mean, like, fried chicken is still good when it's cold.
Yes, and it's very you can travel with it or whatever.
Yeah.
And the visuals of space and how they showed all this stuff where like if I was like a miner or I worked on that planet, like I feel like I would just have like my little lunch pail and like 2 pieces of fried chicken and like
that's funny.
It's not in the fridge, you know, like
It's
like
just been sitting there.
it's like like I'm working on the mines and I've had a box of chicken and it's okay to keep it out for a while.
Yeah.
And so I can stretch it the week so my lunch pail has that. And so it's, you know, it's either a leg or a thigh of not even crispy fried chicken anymore. Now it's kind of soggy, but
it's so good.
But it's eatable. Like I can grab the stick and I can eat it. For whatever reason, this movie kind of gave me those feelings again. Probably a bag of like, it had to be like Ruffles potato chips.
To eat with the chicken?
Yeah.
Or just like this?
Because it's very travelable or like we're going to go on this heist, right? We're going to go get these cryo tubes. And I'm like, well, I'm going to bring some food. So I'm going to bring 2 pieces of chicken and a bag of Ruffles. And then whatever I can drink is whatever I can drink. So that was one thing that I thought that I would eat with this. Again, that's more of a nostalgic call, not really like when I see aliens, I think of chicken. Like it's the pairing is more my my feelings of how I pulled it up. But I think the other thing that for whatever reason made me feel that, and again, I think it's a lot has to do with the visuals and the set dressing and everything, but like pork lo mein in like the old Chinese box for whatever reason, because it feels again something that can travel for an amount of time.
I can see that.
And the visuals of this movie just kind of made me think a lot about like space travel and like, oh, I'm going to be up in space for a while, and you're walking around, you're like, oh, here's a box of some lo mein, and you just kind of pick at it, you know, like as you're walking around and like, not that it's delicious, but it's more like, oh, it's there, and I'll just kind of eat it. And so my 2 picks, which is fried chicken with a small like travel bag of Ruffles, or maybe Ruffles in a Ziploc bag, in my lunch pail. That is option A, and then option B would just be some like pork lo mein that's
also just
like
been sitting out,
table warm, you know, hasn't really been. Yeah, it's kind of been out, and it's like it is the classic. You kind of sniff it, and you're like, man, it seems okay. Like
right.
I should be fine because it feels dingy and kind of dirty, and feels like you can straddle that line of like it's not gonna make me sick.
No, yeah, it's probably
I should be fine, and that this movie feels that way where it's got that gritty grime that takes you right up to the edge, and you give it a sniff, you're like, it should be okay. And then you can kind of go. So those are my 2 picks for food. Do you have any thoughts on what the food could be?
So this one was hard for me because everything was kind of gross.
Yes. Oh man, there's one gross scene in particular.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it. It's a lot. Yeah, but so it's funny because I kind of had this idea when we watched the original. Mm-hmm. So it's a very vivid memory to me that I think I was pretty young when I saw these movies, but I'm pretty sure I saw the second one first.
Was it before you moved here? Or?
Oh yeah, like way before. Probably just like you, like way too young to have watched it, and for a long time, like probably gave me a lot of nightmares. Because even though it was an action movie, if you're young enough when you watch it, it's still really terrifying.
Oh yeah.
But in particular, and it's funny because I very vividly remember, not necessarily, I mean, yeah, the alien and the facehugger, those were scary, but they're still very like alien. You know what I mean? Like it's not something as a kid when you're scared of stuff that is easy to imagine. Like ghosts are scary because you think of like dead people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not very imaginative. So the stuff that you know is the stuff that scare you. And the stuff that was as a kid, the stuff that was scarier to me than the alien was when Bishop is dying and he's just leaking the fluid, the milk fluid out of him. That for me was like horrifying. I don't know, like that actually did give me nightmares as a child.
Yes.
More.
Okay. Yeah.
By magnitudes more than the alien. And it's funny. So it's really gross. But in that light, a milkshake. would be a good pairing with this movie. Super good. I probably wouldn't drink it while I was watching.
Just like a straight up vanilla.
Oh yeah,
milkshake?
just vanilla milkshake.
No fancy, no cookie.
Whipped cream and maraschino cherry. That's it. Yeah, that's.
We'll call it the Bishop.
Yeah.
Well, the Bishop's in the second. He's an alien.
The second one. This one, I guess, would.
It still sounds better though. Yeah, the Bishop.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Bishop was nice in the second one, so you would assume that this milkshake is nice and delicious. Goes down
easier
and nice.
Fight you on the way back up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my one idea.
Actually, okay, I'll even. You can get a milkshake, and if it's without alcohol, it's the Bishop. But if you want some bourbon in it, we can mix that in, and that's the Ash, because that one's gonna fight you a little bit going down.
Yeah.
It's gonna burn coming up.
Yeah.
Like that one's.
It may or may not have been a good idea.
Yeah. Exactly. And so yes, we'll have that on the menu.
So that's always been something that I associated with the movies. And then the other one I can think of, just because we're talking a lot about big bad corporations and big evil companies and whatever, like I would make like homemade chicken nuggets. So that McDonald's or whoever doesn't profit from
the
money. Yeah.
McWhalens.
I would like make it at home, which actually is not super hard. It won't taste the same because it's not highly processed, but
real flat or shaped.
Yeah. I mean, it's you grind your chicken, you put a bunch of shit in it, and you bake it or fry it, whatever. Yeah. It's not super hard to make chicken nuggets. It's just like McDonald's has kind of perfected how addictive they are.
But that's not even real chicken, probably.
No, it's chicken bits and pieces. Who knows where it's from? But yeah, those are my two ideas. Milkshake to wash down the homemade chicken nuggets from Wayland.
I actually kind of like that because I can totally see a McWhalen's like logo.
Yeah, right.
That you pull out a little bag and there's like 10 nuggets that you just throw in the air fryer or whatever it is they have in space. It's probably like a insta heat sort of thing, and then it's like bing,
Yeah.
So like no fries, no nothing, just straight up, just that's it. Like no sauce.
I mean, I guess some fries to go with it to dip in the milkshake.
Well, but
that's
see,
what I did.
I guess in going with the theme, it doesn't seem very travel friendly. Like
no,
because you don't have a fryer.
No, I'm stuck in the mining planet.
So maybe I don't know. It seems like also chips end up with this or something that's very like.
Am I thinking of the wrong space franchise that they can just ask for whatever and it would be? I guess it's Star Trek.
I think you're thinking the Fifth Element.
Or like a replicator on Star Trek, or the Fifth Element, or like the pizza enlarger in Back to the Future.
Yes.
So wrong sci-fi franchise. Yep. Okay. Well, whatever. I guess I'll just eat it on the mining planet.
That sounds good. That sounds good. No, it's funny. I feel like we're both in the same sort of atmosphere or rings of Saturn or whatever with our food choices, because they feel very like they are definitely they are not fancy by any stretch of the imagination. Well, they're very blue collar. Like
and I think too it's almost like how would you say it? It's almost your primitive self, right? When you think about this movie, because it touches on the most basic fear of like being hunted down by something that's bigger and stronger and more powerful than you, and then you're totally like helpless against it because you're also like isolated.
Yeah.
So I think just kind of reaching back to something that's like, I just want something kind of comforting because that's really scary. I want something really really easy because that's all of that.
Well, and you kind of get used to it, right? Like, like I don't know how many times you've been like, when we're just both completely tired and we're like, maybe we should just go pick up something. You're like chicken nugs.
Yeah.
You want. Chicken.
Or like let's throw in a Totino's pizza because whatever, who cares?
Yeah, and that feels like if we were working a long day in the coal mines or whatever it is, like
you're not
Totino's sounds
you're
amazing.
not making fried chicken from scratch. You're buying that shit from Wayland Yutani and throwing it in your lunch pail.
Well, all right. I think that kind of, I guess, just to cap things off, this is definitely a chef special, this movie.
Yes, super enjoyable. I highly recommend.
Same.
definitely.
Actually, I it's funny, when I was logging it into Letterboxd, I actually went ahead and tagged it as one of my favorites for 2024.
Oh, interesting.
This far. I mean, I have like my, like, still like top, you know, it's not the number one movie of the year for me.
Okay.
It's just
high up there.
Yeah.
High up there. Okay, so I was gonna ask before we got into the food stuff, and I kind of forgot and lost track. But what did you think of kind of that last act? I know I feel like it's gonna be very, I don't know, controversial or divisive. Maybe like the last Alien, I guess I would say.
Oh yeah. Okay. So super double spoilers at this point.
Yeah.
If you jumped back in
say
for
so much.
if you jumped back in for the movie,
Yeah, just cut out.
or if you jump back for the food, sorry, jump out here for a minute and then
We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Yeah. At the movies or whatever. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I think that is going to be very divisive, but what I will say, I'm going to go back to what I've been saying for most of this episode, which is, I don't know, it felt very comic booky to have, yeah, so this is major spoiler right here. During the movie, they bring up the fact that they are able to get the black liquid out of the alien, which
it's like a super condensed version, I guess, of like their.
Well, you see it in Prometheus. That's
the black stuff.
It's the microorganism that whatever, and so the pregnant girl impregnates herself with it, or not impregnates.
What?
She's already pregnant, but she takes the shot of the black liquid,
the black goo.
Because
she's about to die.
She's been told
Yeah.
that this could up your chances for living. So, and this is the last act of the movie when she does that. And so we're talking about the alien, the alien that she births,
baby alien, yeah.
Which also that alien had a front butt. I don't know if you caught that.
It was a lot.
There was a lot of stuff happening.
There was a lot of stuff happening. It was a crazy design.
So, well, I think they were trying, and so again, maybe this is speaking to Fetty trying to work with different people and stakeholders here, because it looked part alien. It looked part like the perfect being from Prometheus.
Yeah.
But it's not, because then that would be doing a weird backwards, because that being already existed and then decided to collide itself with the alien to make the super ultra species. So this would be kind of going backwards in a way. So it had very humanistic features, but then it also had a little bit of the Prometheus looking character, but then it also had a little bit of the xenomorph with the things on the back.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but there was a lot going on there. And I think this is why I keep bringing up the comic book portion of this, is because I feel like the concept art for that probably looked pretty
badass,
cool.
Yeah.
But not, when you have 2D art, it doesn't always translate to 3D art. But I feel like super high-end executives don't always understand that. And so they just assume, like, I approve that concept, so I expect to see it. And then on the 3D side, you're doing your best to try to make that work.
Sure.
And there's usually like, nope, it's going to have to be that. And even though you're like, well, what if we could do this? What if we could do that? And they're like, nope, that's not what was approved.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's extra long limbs and the way that its back was still forming and all that stuff. Like, I thought that was kind of like a neat horror touch of it. But the overall, like, design of it felt just really
weird. It's weird, right?
That goes in the uncanny valley of there's something wrong here and I don't know exactly what's wrong.
And I kind of don't like it.
I just, it's just not, it's not scary. It's just making it's making my brain do things that I don't like. It
definitely, it was a little distracting for what it was. Like, I kind of wanted it to be scarier.
Yeah.
Right? Because it, like you said, it just felt very uncanny valley. Like, I kind of, like you said, like, I appreciated what they're trying to do. I kind of like that he wasn't symmetrical. You know what I mean? Like, the body was shaped weird, which I kind of liked.
The hips were very off.
Yeah.
Very asymmetrical, where the front butt ended up being.
I don't even necessarily mind what they did with the face, that he looked like one of the Prometheus aliens. I
Yeah.
didn't mind that so much. I think maybe they could have given him a different texture or color or something, because it felt more like a Prometheus alien than a xenomorph.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yeah, I would double down on what you just said there, and that like there needed to be more xenomorph. Well, and see, and that's the thing. Like, again, like I'm sure the concept probably looked cooler
Badass, yeah.
This creature had a tail,
Yeah,
like a xenomorph tail. But to me, that's not the thing.
that's not the thing that makes.
They should have given it. That's
yeah.
not the thing that gives it that profile. They should have either given it the legs that have the weird
legs.
like
Yeah, yeah.
super thighs and the
Yeah.
kind of backward chicken legs or whatever. Like, and then but then you end up with like people probably, and I'm sure this probably went through a lot of the art directors and executives of like, well, now it looks like a minotaur, and now it looks like you can't have like from the waist down being a different legs to the upper body.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's like a real tough one to try to like.
Well, it kept making me think
appease
of
everybody.
It made me think back to Alien Resurrection with the alien in that movie.
The mama,
I don't care what anybody says about that movie. I'm sure that's also very divisive, whatever. But like, I actually really liked the design of that alien, because it was very much. It looked like weirdly enough, like a sympathetic version of the xenomorph.
Yeah,
because that's what they were
right.
going for.
The face actually was able to emote.
Yeah, and
like,
you can
and
you can tell that it was part xenomorph because it still had that super elongated shape in the head.
It's very practical.
Yeah, and it didn't. It even had like a different coloring entirely, also, but you could still see the imprint of like the xenomorph on the design. Yeah. So that's what I kind of wanted for this one, and it just I felt a little flat for it.
Yeah,
and I wanted to be like so scared, because like the build up to it was so intense when she's looking for the creepy baby that like ran away, I guess.
Right.
It just, I don't know. I wanted it to be like really horrifying, and it was just like, oh, that, ooh.
Yeah,
it
ended up being not horrifying for the right reasons.
Right.
It was more
it was
like
just very strange looking.
My brain is just firing off all the synapses of like something is wrong.
Like, what is this?
And I'm trying to pick up on it, and I don't know if it was the asymmetricalness of it or the whatever. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, either the head needed to be more xenomorphy. Like, again, they it's almost like, I hate to say it, and whatever, like, we probably have like 50 listeners, and I'm sure
many?
and I'm sure they're not like executives, but I feel like an executive said, we'll put in the little mouth pusher, but put it in a human, because I mean that's
weird, right?
And give it the tail, and give it like and like it's so piecemealed that it doesn't work. Whereas I feel if you had given an art director full control or better control, I think you would have had a better result, because it should have, I agree with you. Like, maybe it should have been more, maybe it would have looked weird, but I think you could have taken the swing of like you were saying, the head is longer, but the face looks more like a human face. And then like, maybe some of the skeletal structure from like the upper body, which they did show on the back, but I mean, he's facing towards us, so I can't really
so
see it in the back.
Yeah.
But he had like the little, like, almost like the protruding sort of exoskeleton sort of things that, like, I guess you would see like they almost look like jetpacks on the back. And so they're kind of going out in opposite directions. But it's like, it's on the back. Like, we're not seeing that.
Right.
So like,
and even though he had a tail, like, I almost like forgot that, you know what I mean? Like,
well,
it
you
wasn't
don't even notice the tail was there until they do the wide shot. So
and it wasn't like a thing that it was using for anything.
It does not help. It does not help. Again, in the concept, that probably looks great in silhouette. But most of these are tighter shots, and they're like mid shots, or like there are rarely a wide shot. So it's like you're not getting that. And I'm sure the editor I'm sure they forced him to kind of say like, hey, we need to see that tail. Like, paid a lot of money for that. But like, yeah, you're right. Like, I think a lot of the visual front side features were not really addressed, and so
it just looked bizarre. Yeah, it looked like a bunch of bizarre choices that didn't quite gel. I didn't ruin the movie for me, but
no, it didn't. Not for me.
It just felt like a weird decision because the rest of the movie was so solid. You know what I mean? Like everything else worked so well together.
The one menu on the item that you're just like, nobody orders that.
Yeah,
but like the corporate guys want us to put it on there because they say that, because
it's trending.
Yeah, exactly. It's a trendy thing, and they feel like they know what they need to put in there, but we have it on there and nobody cares. So yeah, I agree with you. Like it didn't bother me, but it did throw it did throw an interesting bite into it's like, I think I bit into a bone or something. I'm not sure what happened here, but I don't know if I really like it. Right. But I'm gonna power through this because it's already in my mouth.
All of the rest of the things are fine.
A lot of cartilage, a lot of cartilage. And, well, I think that wraps us up on this. I kind of feel like a Tostino's. We need to eat something.
Oh, I guess so.
It is late, but
late.
you said Totino's pizza, and it kind of.
Oh no.
I kind of feeling a Totino's, and maybe fire up one more movie for the night. It's a Saturday night.
It is Saturday. We can stay up late.
Yeah, no, we can. It's not a school night.
That's true.
All right, well, let's go get a Totino's and.
Or bagel bites.
Okay,
Ooh.
You get bagel bites. I'm gonna get a Totino, or maybe if the church is still open, maybe I'll get some chicken.
Oh,
it's a little late for chicken.
A little late for chicken.
All right, well, we'll close the recipe book or the. I don't know. We're still working on that. We're still trying to figure out
it's rough, guys.
Outro.
It's rough.
It's
if you have any recommendations,
please send them.
Let us know. We're floundering here.
But let's set the timer. No, that doesn't work.
No,
that's not gonna work for this.
Let's shut the restaurant doors. I don't know.
Okay, let's just close the door and go home.
Let's close the menu, or no, let's I don't know.
Yeah, let's put away our
let's
put away our knives.
Let's stop the podcast.
Let's stop the podcast and go get a pizza.
It's rough out here, guys.
Yeah, love you.
Love you too.